They don't want you to be smart. Not too smart, not too curious, not smart enough to question. Because once you start thinking for yourself, you become unpredictable. You become dangerous. Schopenhauer understood this. He didn't just write about intelligence, he lived the cost of it. Ordinary people merely think how they shall spend their time. A man of talent tries to use it. And when you try to use your mind instead of wasting it, society turns on you. Because intelligent people don't just ask what, they ask why. Why do we follow these rules? Why do we work ourselves to death for things we don't need? Why do we pretend to be happy when we're dying inside? And that's terrifying. Because when one man starts thinking, others start waking up. And society is built on sleep. The truth is, intelligent people break the illusion. They're like mirrors. When you stand next to them, you see all the parts of yourself you've been ignoring. That's why people mock the thinker. That's why they isolate the genius. It's not because he's wrong. It's because he's right, and they hate how small it makes them feel. Look at history. The brightest minds, always alone. Socrates, poisoned. Nietzsche, called insane. Schopenhauer, laughed at and ignored. The world doesn't reward insight. It rewards obedience. And that's the game. Be clever, but not too clever. Be smart, but stay inside the lines. The moment you step outside, they come for you. Why? Because intelligence is the one thing that can't be controlled. It breaks patterns. It asks hard questions. It makes people uncomfortable. The intelligent man doesn't need attention, doesn't chase trends, doesn't beg for approval. He builds his mind like a fortress, and that intimidates the herd. He sees what they can't. He questions what they won't, and he refuses to lie just to be liked. That's the threat. That's why they try to silence you. Because intelligence shines a light in all the places society wants to keep dark. And once the lights are on, the performance ends. So if you've ever felt like you didn't belong, like your mind was too much for the room, remember, you're not the problem. You're the reflection. And people run from mirrors. Schopenhauer knew. The more intelligent a man is, the more he suffers. But he also knew, the more you see, the freer you become. So keep thinking, keep questioning, even if it scares them, especially if it scares them. Because fear is the first sign that they know you've seen the truth. Let them be afraid.
You want to know why society isolates intelligent people? Because control only works when people stop asking questions. And the moment you start asking real ones, the kind that unravel the lies we live by, you no longer fit into the system. You become a glitch. Schopenhauer wasn't just writing philosophy. He was documenting exile. His mind was decades ahead of his time, and the world responded the same way it always does, by ignoring him until he was dead. You see, society is terrified of those who see too clearly. The intelligent man doesn't fall in love with the illusion. He sees the marketing behind morality, the manipulation beneath tradition, the emptiness behind social performance. He watches people wake up, scroll, consume, obey, and repeat, thinking they're free just because they can choose which flavor of distraction to buy. But he doesn't buy it. Not the product, not the dream, not the lie. And that's when they start calling him names. Troublemaker, cynic, arrogant. But those are just masks to hide the truth. He sees what they don't want to see. They don't attack him because he's wrong. They attack him because he's right. And because deep down, they know it. Intelligence is not just about knowledge. It's about disturbing clarity. A clarity that shows how fake most conversations are, how shallow most values are, how conditioned most behavior is. That's what makes the intelligent man hard to be around. He doesn't laugh at stupid things. He doesn't worship status. He doesn't chase approval like a drug. He doesn't want small talk. He wants truth. And the world is built to avoid that at all costs. So what does society do? It rewards compliance and punishes awareness. It celebrates the charming idiot and silences the uncomfortable thinker. And if you speak the truth too often, they don't argue with you. They erase you. They ghost you. They say you're too intense. They push you out of the circle because your presence ruins the performance. But let me tell you something. If you're intelligent, this pain is the price. Isolation is the fee for seeing clearly, and silence from the crowd is proof that you've escaped it. Schopenhauer knew this pain. He knew that the more he saw, the less he could say. Because wisdom, in an unwise world, doesn't get applause. It gets exiled. So if you feel alone, if you feel too awake in a sleeping world, if you feel punished for thinking too deeply, you're not broken. You're becoming free. And they hate you for it. Here's the truth no one talks about. Intelligence comes with a cost. And that cost is loneliness. Not the kind you feel when no one's around, but the kind that haunts you even in a room full of people. Because the intelligent man doesn't just think differently. He feels differently. He sees through conversations. He hears the insecurity behind confidence. He notices the emptiness behind a laugh, the fear behind anger, the mask behind the smile. And when you see too much, you start saying less. That's why intelligent people go silent. Not because they're shy, but because it's exhausting explaining yourself to a world that doesn't want to understand. You outgrow fake friendships. You lose interest in shallow connections. You can't sit around pretending the weather matters when the whole world is crumbling under its own lies. You're not above people, but you feel apart from them. Because you care too much, you think too much, you see too much. So you retreat. Into books, into thoughts, into silence. Not because you hate the world, but because the world doesn't know what to do with you. Schopenhauer lived in that silence. He didn't attend parties. He didn't seek approval. He understood that the more intelligent a man becomes, the more he'll walk a path that fewer and fewer can follow. And the higher he climbs, the colder it gets. Because people don't fear the intelligent man just because he's smart. They fear him because he doesn't need them. He's not addicted to validation. He doesn't fear solitude. He doesn't play the social game just to feel normal. And when someone doesn't need the herd sees him as a threat. They think, if he doesn't need what we need, is what we need even real? That's the danger. He doesn't just question society. He makes others question themselves. And not everyone wants to wake up. Not everyone wants to be free. Freedom sounds beautiful, until you realize it means standing alone. So they call him cold, detached, arrogant. But they're wrong. He's not arrogant. He's just done explaining things to people who don't want to understand. And if that's you, if you felt this quiet disconnection, know that you're not broken. You're ahead. You're not bitter. You're aware. And yes, it's lonely at first. But eventually you realize it's better to walk alone in truth than to sit in a crowded room of lies. Let them misunderstand you. Let them mock what they can't comprehend. You weren't born to fit in. You were born to see. Society keeps telling you to just be yourself, but only if that self fits their script. Be yourself, but not too honest, not too intense, not too awake. Because the truth is, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to disturb the system. Schopenhauer believed that true individuality is not found in rebellion or noise, but in the quiet act of thinking for yourself. And when you do that, when you really break free from imitation, you stop being part of the audience. You become a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. Because most people aren't looking for truth, they're looking for comfort. They want approval, not awakening. They want belonging, not freedom. But the intelligent man? He trades comfort for clarity. He trades popularity for purpose, and that makes him an outsider, not by choice, but by nature. He walks through life like a foreigner. Everyone around him speaks in cliches, and he's speaking in questions. They're chasing attention. He's chasing understanding. They're addicted to stimulation. He's addicted to silence.
They want to be seen. He wants to see. That's why most people don't get him. Because you can't understand someone who's not trying to impress you. You can't decode someone who doesn't follow the script. And so, they fear him. Because what they can't label, they can't control. And what they can't control, they reject. If you've ever felt like you were too deep, too analytical, too different, you're not alone. There are others like you, scattered, observing, watching the madness unfold from a distance. And if you're one of them, this place is for you. This channel isn't built for the masses. It's built for those who think, who question, who don't want another motivational soundbite or surface-level advice. So if you're still here, still listening, maybe you found a rare space, a space where your mind isn't too much, where your depth isn't a weakness, where intelligence isn't feared but fed. Subscribe, not because you're told to, but because something in you refuses to settle for shallow thinking. If that's you, you're already one of us. Because the real ones, they don't follow noise, they follow truth. And truth always finds its own.
Let's be honest. Intelligence is not the blessing people think it is. It's a burden, a weight you carry alone. Because once you start seeing things as they are, you can't unsee them. You walk through life decoding everything. You hear what people mean, not just what they say. You recognize manipulation hiding in kindness. You notice agendas behind smiles. You sense desperation behind confidence. And worst of all, you see the patterns repeating. Generations making the same mistakes. People trading their freedom for routine, waking up, working, distracting themselves to death, calling it success. But Schopenhauer knew most people would rather suffer blindly than think deeply. Because thinking deeply forces you to confront the void, the emptiness behind the roles we play, the meaninglessness behind our status, the terrifying reality that so much of life is a performance, and most people don't even know they're acting. So the intelligent man suffers, not because he's weak, but because he's awake. And yet, that suffering is sacred. It's what separates the animal from the philosopher. It's the price of seeing clearly. But here's the twist. That pain, it becomes power. Because once you've faced the truth and refused to look away, no one can control you again. You don't need their approval. You don't chase fake status. You don't perform to be liked. You walk with your head high, not because you're arrogant, but because you've earned your mind. And eventually, you find others, quiet minds in loud rooms, sharp thinkers behind silent eyes, men who didn't sell their soul for acceptance, women who stopped pretending to be small, a rare tribe of people who value clarity over comfort, freedom over belonging, depth over noise. If you felt out of place your whole life, good. It means you never sold out. You never dumbed yourself down just to be understood. You chose truth, even when it cost you everything. And that choice, that quiet, stubborn refusal to become like the rest, is what makes you dangerous. Schopenhauer wasn't popular. He wasn't praised. But he saw the world for what it was and still chose to speak. That's real courage. So remember this. If the world fears your mind, don't hide it. Sharpen it. Use it. And let that fear remind you, you're on the right path. The lonely path, the painful path, the path of intelligence, and eventually, the path to freedom. Let that sink in.